everybody, it's Sarah and I am back again with a new video. This time I have the feeling that it was a bit faster than usual. Might just be my feeling though. Anyway, it's still exciting because today I am finally filming a review again. And that review is of Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, which is the first book in his new science fiction YA series. As most of the time with my reviews, I will have a spoiler-free section at the beginning before I get into a bit more of a spoilery discussion and a bit more in depth about the stuff that I loved and the stuff that I didn't like that much, although, spoiler warning, there wasn't a lot that I didn't like. But first of all, let me quickly summarize this book. As I said, this is a YA science fiction novel and it follows Spencer, aka Spin, who is a young teenage girl living on a planet that is constantly attacked by an alien race called the Krell. Spencer's dream is to become a pilot just like her father, and the first book just follows her on that journey, how she can become a pilot, how she can work towards the dream, and the hurdles she faces. So, as I already said, I absolutely love this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, although to be honest, I have to say that I'm a bit biased when it comes to Brandon Sanderson. I read his books very easily, and he's one of those authors where I don't even notice the faults unless someone points them out to me. So just a fair warning. Although this was a buddy read for the Tome Topple readathon for me, and the two people I read it with also both loved it, so no matter how biased I am, it's a good book. The thing that stood out most to me in this book, to be honest, were the tropes. I get the feeling that in booktube it's usually like a bad thing when you say a book is very tropey, because it usually means that the book is very predictable. However, I personally love tropes. I personally think that stories need tropes, and when you look at your favorite books, they won't be the books that don't follow tropes at all, usually. However, even though I say this book is very tropey, and I will get into it more in detail what I mean with that when it comes to Spin, it's still not your usual tropes. Brandon Sanderson has a way that he uses tropes. He uses tropes that are used in YA, that are used in fantasy, and he puts his own little twist to it. He changes it just a little bit. For example, Spin is your usual YA main character. She is very emotional, she is very rash, she has a bit of a temper. She is not always the smartest. She has a few decisions where you're like, why exactly did you do that? Honestly, in the first 5 chapters of this book, I thought that I would hate Spin. She was very rash. She had like only this one dream to be a pilot, and basically everything else is rubbish, and she looks down on everything else, and I was just like, I'm not really vibing with that character, which by the way for me is okay. Most of the time in YA books I'm not the biggest fan of a character. However, she did prove a lot that she's not your typical YA character. That while she is emotional, she also makes decisions based on like what's the smartest decision. Sometimes she gets caught up in the moment, but it's like, it's not a bad thing always. And she backpedals, she notices how she did something wrong, and she learns a lot. There's so much character development when it comes to Spin in this book. It's like crazy. I think it's been ages since I read a book, especially a YA book, where there was so much character development in the main character just in the first book. Usually character development, at least I find personally, is reserved for the second and third books and like the continuation, because you kind of have to set up a character before you can develop it. However, there was like so much character development already in this book, and Spin at the end of the novel definitely is not the same Spin as at the beginning of the novel. So that's what I meant with Brandon Sanderson plays tropes in his own way. Spin is in a way a very typical YA main character, a very tropey YA main character, but at the same time she is not at all, and she's very different. By the way, if I ever accidentally say Vin in this review, I am so sorry. Like, try to remember if I already said it. I hope I didn't, but that like happens to me all the time accidentally. Yeah, when you have similar names for main characters. The next thing I wanted to talk about in a spoiler-free way is the world building. This book does not have a lot of world building so far. It basically is, there's humans living on a planet and they fight aliens. And that's basically the world building. There's not a lot of more complicated stuff in there, which is surprising for Brandon Sanderson, because if you have ever read a Brandon Sanderson book, especially concerning the Cosmere, his world building usually is very extensive. However, I did not mind this at all in this book, that there wasn't a lot of world building, especially because this book very much set up the world building for the future books, so we do know that there's a lot more to come. And for this first book, it was very nice to keep it very simple, so that you get into the story very easily. The one thing that I could say that is more negative about this series is there wasn't a lot of diversity that I noticed. Like, honestly, I don't know how far ethnical diversity goes in this book, because I have to say honestly, I don't notice that stuff. Like, you literally have to tell me every single time a person is mentioned if they are a different ethnicity that isn't Caucasian. Otherwise, I will just assume they're all the same ethnicity, and I don't care whether that's Caucasian or non-Caucasian or whatever. There are different races in this book, but it has nothing to do with DNA. So they are not like Caucasian, African, Asian, that type of thing, but it has more to do with the history of the book and more job-wise. So I didn't really notice that there were any differences in their skin colors or anything. Usually Brandon Sanderson has like a few POC characters, but as I said, I don't really know. It wasn't obvious or glaringly obvious to me. I right now don't even know what hair color Spin has. So that shows you how aware I am of the appearances of people in novels, especially Brandon Sanderson's books. Like, usually the only people that I remember what they look like are redheads, because redheads, or also blondes, because usually if you have a blonde character, especially a female blonde character, you always read about the golden locks or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of the one minus point that Brandon Sanderson gets for me, is the diversity in this book, which again, I can't say much about, except for me it wasn't obvious. So to summarize, I would highly, highly recommend everyone go read this book. It's amazing and I loved it. And so go read it. And now I'll get into a bit more of a spoilery discussion. First, I want to talk more about Spin's character development. And I think there were two things that very much stood out to me and that I think were very smartly done. The first thing is just the way Spin talks. Like, at the beginning she has like all those, she's always spewing nonsense about killing someone in a gruesome way and stuff, and as she kind of grows up in a way, as she becomes more aware of herself, she does that less and less. And on the one hand, it has to do with her self-doubts, with her having the defect and everything, or what this defect even is. And on the other hand, it's also, as I said, her growing up. I think it shows her development in a very nice way. How she says that stuff less and less, and also then the mirroring of that in M-Bot, and how he then suddenly starts and she's like, oh wait, is that how I sound? Do I sound that stupid? Like, do I actually sound that stupid? And it just was very nicely done. Also, I love M-Bot, just saying. And the second thing that I also very much loved about her development is her relationship to Jorgen, or Jerkface, because at the beginning she only calls him Jerkface, and you really notice that as she grows to respect him more and more, Jerkface is replaced with his actual name, which is Jorgen, and that's just such a nice little touch, and I really, really love it. I love her relationship with Jorgen in general. Jorgen is probably one of my favorite characters. I thought from the very beginning, to be honest, that he wouldn't be your usual jerk face character. I mean, he seemed very arrogant, and he is very arrogant at the beginning, but even when Cobb said, like, no, the reason I made him flight leader isn't because he's privileged and isn't because he's from the lower caverns and stuff, but the reason I made him flight leader is because he actually has more experience than any of you all in this class. So deal with it like that. And so again, that's one of those tropes, like you have those privileged assholes that are privileged for no reason. And Brandon Sanderson put a twist on it, and like you have the privileged assholes that are privileged, but they're privileged for a reason as well. And from that moment on, I thought that Jerkface would definitely be a very interesting character, and I really looked forward to his development and how he would change. And I just love how his relationship to Spin changed and how it developed, and how it started with like him just saying, why would I go to anyone and make them throw you out? Because like you're an asshole, but you can fly really well and I want you on my team. And then them going to the burial of Hurl, and then like the whole thing, awkward hug scene, which I absolutely loved. I actually do not know if I ship them or not, but I think Brandon Sanderson did it really well. On the one hand, he did kind of plant the seeds for Spin to be attracted to Jorgen and him to her, but he didn't make it explicit. It could just as well be just them forming a really tight and really good friendship, and I think I actually would prefer that in the future books. And I think that's so amazing and so nice, and I love it. And then of course at the end, the scene where he took his call sign Jerkface, even though he was a character that mostly was seen from point of view of Spin, you still noticed that there was a lot of development in his character as well that was really well done. Doomslug and Embot take the cake for best characters ever though. I love Embot, I love his mushrooms, I love everything about him. Again, Brandon Sanderson came with the twists with Spin's father. I think all of us kind of knew that he wasn't a coward. I didn't see the thing coming with him being a traitor though. And then also the thing going back that like he wasn't actually a traitor, but like the two-way twist, you know what I'm talking about. I loved it. It wasn't as big a twist in some of Brandon Sanderson's other books, but I still enjoyed it, and I'm really, really excited to see where the whole thing with the defect is going, and with being able to like control ships and stuff and all that shit. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is I kind of didn't see the deaths coming. I mean, I saw the deaths coming. I thought the first time they would fly out that like half of them would already die, which they didn't. So it surprised me more the second time, because I was like, okay, maybe not. And then the second time 2 people died, and then 1 more person died. And then like everyone else left as well. And I think he did it in a really smart way, who he killed off and everything. That's so horrible to say. Because he kind of killed off the people that aren't important, but that you care about. So like usual, but not in a way like where he made it obvious who was gonna die. Honestly, I thought FM was probably going to die. I did not expect Morningtide to die. I was like, he just set up her and Spin's kind of starting friendship, Spin helping her understand and stuff, and then it's like, she's dead. Okay, what? I was sure that Quirk was going to die. She didn't. I didn't think so many people would leave. I'm like, the deaths were something that I highly enjoyed, like the way it was done. That sounds so weird. I also didn't think Hurl was gonna die. The deaths were like really, really sudden. I don't know why. It was crazy. Anyway, that was it for this review. If you read this book, please tell me in the comments down below what you thought of it. I absolutely loved it, as I said, as I have made clear, I think, in this review. All the links to my social media will be in the description box down below, so go and check those out. And if you liked this video, please think about giving it a thumbs up and maybe subscribing, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!